1 week season.
And welcome in, OWS fam. So glad you're with us. We are back in the DFS lab. It is Tuesday, November 5th, and we are absolutely excited to take an early look at the upcoming Week 10. As always, the show presented by 1 week season. And just the purpose of this show, build a lineup on DraftKings and use that as a vehicle, in this case, to start looking at Week 10. As always, I'm your host, Cheeseman, and I now welcome up Hilow. Hilow, how's it going today? And how was your week 9?
We're not going to talk about week 9. No, I'm just kidding.
All right.
Week 9, I did not do very well. I think I had 5 rosters in play. I didn't cash a single roster, so it was great. It was awesome.
Yeah, dude, I almost didn't cash a single roster myself. I think I had one that minimum cashed. I think I entered like 6 lineups, and it was not a good day for me either.
Yeah, man. I keep having these down weeks on the 555 milli weeks. It's like, damn it, man. Let me get a sweat in that bad boy again. I had 1 sweat in that contest this year, but yeah, I'm looking forward to get back to the sweat column. Before we continue though, I have to shout Cheese's ridiculously good mustache, dude, because it is looking
Oh,
fire.
dude, thank you, man. I appreciate that. Yeah, I've just been kind of trying it out this year. It's kind of fun, but
yeah, dude.
Hey, thanks for noticing.
Yeah, man.
Good stuff. And so let me just jump into DraftKings here, and we'll kind of just get our contest pulled up. This time I've got it filtered to entry fee minimum 100. Man, there's like a contest that's like a 4,400 buy-in.
Yeah,
that's kind of insane, right? Yeah, and then
Yeah.
I think I saw a post from Levitan on X last week where there's a contest. I think it's maybe week 17 or something where there's a $2 million first prize. That's kind of crazy too.
Yeah, it's the biggest DFS tournament ever.
Yeah.
I forget what the buy. I think it's a 3K buy-in.
Yeah, that sounds right.
Yeah. So I am looking forward to that. I want to run some satellites to try and get into that bad boy, but I think I'll be playing it regardless.
Yeah.
We'll see.
So what do you want to do? You want to do spy, double spy? What do you want to do here?
Let's do the spy. We'll go back to the single entry streets with the bigger spy. I think that's the most it's the most commonly entered like single entry contest. So the most popular. So we'll kind of cater to that this week.
Awesome. Yeah, just the quick details. 100K to first. The entry field is 4,444 or 4,500 just to round up, and 150 minimum cash off $100 buy-in. So yeah, man. Week 10 is here. We're really officially at the midway point. This is kind of like probably the last week where you can say we're halfway, and next week probably say we're past halfway. Where do you want to start here in terms of discussing Week 10? Obviously, you have some, not as many higher total games this week, and also only 10 games, but you have Tampa Bay and the 49ers at a 50 total right now, but then below that, a bunch in like the 46s.
Yeah, so this is another slate where we're back to a 10-gamer. We have bye weeks, we have a game in London, and the median game total is way down compared to the last 2 weeks. So all those things come together. A smaller slate, the game totals are down, team totals are down, and pricing is still super, super tight on both major sites. This has the feel of another week where it's like 190, 195 might ship GPPs. So we're going to kind of build through that lens today. With the understanding of that's our goal. And it's a good practice to kind of figure out what the goal is, because that's going to dictate how we construct rosters. If we need to take on additional variance because we're projecting to need 205, 210 points to win GPPs, we need to go into the week building with that mindset. This week, though, it's kind of the other way where we might only need 190, 195 to ship major GPPs this week. So we can build with that as our goal. And the secondary aspect of that discussion is we are unlikely to have very many 25 plus, 30 plus fantasy points to come out of this slate. So capturing those is going to be immensely valuable.
Yeah, exactly that. That's what I was going to ask. So in that case, it just makes trying to identify those high confidence spots that much more important versus saying, "Man, I got to take some pretty aggressive swings this week because I'm gonna need it."
Yeah, 100%. So like immediately right off the rip, like the Eagles jump off the page as like a team that is likely to return a 25 plus, a 30 plus fantasy point score. If pricing were uh, a lot less strict, we would just like, all right, we're going to play Jalen Hurts, we're going to play Saquon Barkley, take your pick at one of the wide receivers, because it would be so much likelier that that team returns a 25 plus, 30 plus fantasy score. Because pricing is so tight. And I was messing around with this before we got on. It's really, really hard to like start a roster with Jalen Hurts and Saquon Barkley. Like you borderline can't do it this week. Um, so that's going to shift our focus into these more variant offenses as our starting point.
Okay.
And so we're going to start this. And another team that's kind of like that is the 49ers. Like we expect them to score points. It's highly likely we see a 25 plus, 30 plus fantasy point come out of that team. We're expecting to get CMC back in the fold. So it becomes really, really hard to build like a primary stack around that team because of where pricing is. Deebo Samuel's priced at 6,900. CMC's still priced at 8K. So it's really hard to stack them up with pricing so tight. So we're going to kind of keep that in mind as we start to build here, where those are two teams where we probably want exposure to in almost every roster, because those teams are very, very likely to return a 25 plus, 30 plus fantasy point score. And those scores are going to be that much harder to capture this week. So we'll keep that in mind as we start to build. And I want to start this roster actually with a team playing in one of those good game environments that is probably not going to get the interest that I think they deserve. So we're going to start with Baker Mayfield.
Dude, I
And if we
actually
look
was
at
just sorry to interrupt.
no,
I
go for it.
wanted to ask you about Baker, so I'm like pumped that we're kind of like on the same wavelength right now because I'm like, dude, even against the Chiefs on the road last night, Baker just. But I'm sure you're gonna say all this, so you go.
Yeah. So
Yeah.
Baker has passed for multiple touchdowns in 7 of 9 games this season. He has returned a 4x salary multiplier 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 times out of 9 games. That's insane. That's unheard of. And yes, like he was missing his top 3 pass catchers last week. I would expect Jalen McMillan to miss again in week 10 because he had a Friday injury. It's a soft tissue, so he's probably going to be out again. So what does that mean to us? Well, that means like Cade Otton has been the primary pass catcher in this offense for 3 weeks in a row, and he's likely to continue to be. He's seen target counts of 10, 10, and 11 the past 3 games. So that is highly unlikely to change here. And yes, like I get it. The San Francisco 49ers have one of the better coverage linebackers in the game, but they're moving Cade Otton around enough to where we shouldn't expect Cade Otton to see like anything like a linebacker shadow. And he's not only playing in line. So they're moving him to the slot. He saw some wide snaps last week. So he should do well enough to kind of avoid like keyed on coverage in this spot. So yeah, with Baker Mayfield, we like this game environment. The Buccaneers are at home. They're in a borderline must-win game. Like they head to their bye week in week 11. So this is a spot where I expect them to kind of be like balls to the wall. We need a win here. They're in a division that is like they're not out of it by any stretch of the imagination just yet, but they need a win here, right? If you look at the NFC South, I'm trying to pull it up right now. The NFC South is Atlanta at the top at 6-3. The Buccaneers are 2 games behind them at 4-5. With the NFC North this season, we're probably going to see 2, if not 3 playoff teams come from the NFC North. So what does that do? That eats up 2 wildcard spots. So the Buccaneers really, really need to push to win their division. They've already dropped 2 games against Atlanta. They have to get a win this week. So I'd expect Liam Cohen to kind of bring out all the stops. against a San Francisco opponent that is really, really underperforming their expectations. Sitting at 4-4, we know the NFC West is the most competitive division. They need a win as well. So that all kind of sets up to like prop this game environment. And what we're looking for is we want like these teams to go into desperation mode quicker, because that should change like offensive tendencies. We already know the Buccaneers are going to be tossing the football around. So yeah, like Baker Mayfield is a good way, I think, to get access to this game environment where a lot of eyes are going to be on it, but it feels very uncomfortable to go there because the Buccaneers are missing Mike Evans, Chris Godwin, potentially Jalen McMillan. And then San Francisco has a bunch of changes because they're probably getting Juwan Jennings back coming off their bye. They're probably getting CMC back coming off their bye. And they're without Brandon Ayuk. So both of these teams kind of like, they just have a lot of moving pieces that makes it rather uncomfortable to go there. So we'll start with Baker. We'll add Cade Otton as well. And then while Sterling Shepard like had a fantastic fourth quarter, at this point in his career, he is not a guy who is going to play a lot of snaps. Like he's going to play like standard slot snap rates of 60 to 70%. The guy that was on the field the most was actually Rakim Jarrett. Second year wide receiver. He played like 84% of the offensive snaps. He only saw one target last week against the Chiefs because the Chiefs are going to force everything short. I say last night by the time when we're recording this. So Rakim Jarrett is priced at 3,600. He makes this nice, like, we're betting on this game. We're betting on Baker Mayfield succeeding. So what does Baker need to succeed? He probably needs to go over 300 and toss 3 touchdowns. So Rakim Jarrett is a nice way to capture some splash play potential in that equation. And he's not just like saying like, I need a cheap wide receiver here. Like who's down there? Okay, Rakim Jarrett's 3,600. He played 84% of the offensive snaps. No, it's like he's a direct path to the same bet that we're making with Baker Mayfield. So we'll throw him in there to start as well. And we'll get this nice, tidy Baker Mayfield double to start this roster from a game environment that we're looking to attack.
Yeah, and I especially with the tight pricing, this comes to looks like about 16K combined, which you'd need 64 to stand a 200-point pace with that, which is entirely possible. I think you like to average it. So what would it be? Yeah, per player, something like 20 or so per player.
Yeah, I like to average it because that's that like single entry mindset. It's this saying like, I don't necessarily need to get like the top 3 scorers from Tampa Bay. I'm saying like, if this offense succeeds, it becomes that much more likely that these 3 players are contributing. And if they come out and average 20 points per player, like if Rakim Jarrett scores 15 as a one-off, that's not that great. But in the context of this stack and this slate, it becomes that much more important to say like, hey, with this team, if they succeed, I can get 3 roster spots right. And now I have additional salary to play around with the rest of the roster. So yeah, this is a nice setup for this week from this team in particular.
Yeah, I like it, man. I like it. Cool. So that's the start. Yeah, where do you want to go next?
We're going to bring it back with a member of the 49ers because like we talked about, the 49ers are highly likely to return a 25 plus, 30 plus fantasy point score here. We don't expect the 49ers to come out and say like, oh yeah, we're facing a pass funnel matchup. We're just going to come out with a game plan that we're going to be chucking around the yard. So we don't really expect, double-digit targets for Deebo Samuel. We don't really expect double-digit targets for George Kittle. But what we're looking for is that splash play potential. Like both of those players still have it, but I really, really like the salary discount of George Kittle. And I think it is completely viable in the current state of pricing in DFS to start going back to these double tight end builds. The problem that we've had with double tight end builds over the last 2 or 3 seasons is the field is kind of using them to gain their value. So they're using them to like, I'm going to go double tight end and I'm going to use 2 tight ends priced below 4K. It's like, that's not really the way that we want to use this double tight end. We want to still have all of these players have access to 25 plus fantasy point ceilings. And those tight ends that are like quote unquote value, or people are searching for value on their roster, they don't necessarily bring that kind of upside. We're going to see outliers. We're going to see, Mike Gesicki busted play, 2 touchdown, 100-yard game. That's going to happen every now and then. But from a repeatable habit, from a repeatable process and a habit pattern, it makes more sense to say like, hey, George Kittle and Cade Otton, they're priced below 6K. They're more likely on this slate to outscore the wide receivers that they're priced around. Mm-hmm. So we're comparing it to like the wide receivers in that range. I would argue that most of the tight ends that are priced below 4K this week probably don't have as good a chance to put up like a usable fantasy score as a guy like Rakim Jarrett, who we already put in this roster. So we're going to throw George Kittle on this roster. We're going to do the double tight end thing, do the dirty. But we're going to do it in a way that is telling a story. Yeah. It's telling a story here of like, we're getting access to things that matter. We're getting access to the 49ers, who we expect to score some points. We're getting access to this game environment, probably in a way that the field is not.
Yeah, I love that, man. And it just, we were talking for just a second before we got on, but the 6K range of receivers and below is just ugly right now. And yeah, I just feel like, you have as good a chance at getting a lot of those guys. I don't even feel like they're putting up like, a 4X score. It's like maybe they get 15 or maybe they get 5. And it just feels like they're just a goose egg waiting to happen in your lineup.
Yeah, or an egg, man. Both of them. Like,
yeah,
who likes a goose leg? I'm just kidding.
Sure that is.
So we'll take this direction and talk about like what's most important next to consider, and that's probably this Eagles team. We talked about like the Eagles are highly likely to return a 25 plus fantasy point score. So where can we capture that? Against this floundering Dallas defense that is now without Dak Prescott, potentially without CeeDee Lamb after he was ruled week to week with that AC joint issue. And he injured it in the first half and then came back to the game. And then on that fourth quarter play, which could have been a touchdown had he come down with it, he aggravated it. So I'm inclined to believe that we're probably not going to see CeeDee. I don't know what Dallas is doing, man. Like, dude, they're out of playoff contention almost already. They have an injured quarterback. They have an injured alpha wide receiver, and they go out and sign or trade for Jonathan Mingo. It's like, I don't know what they're doing, man. But
who knows?
All that to say, like, it's highly likely that the Eagles control this game environment, and it's highly likely that they score some points. So I'm just gonna say, like, it's highly likely that Saquon Barkley sees a 25-28 running back opportunity game here in a good matchup. And I don't know if he'll garner the ownership that he's supposed to in this spot just because pricing is so tight. So, I mean, Saquon Barkley, 1, 2, 3, 4 games of 30 fantasy points or more already through 8 games. That's unreal. So it's highly likely,
like 50%. That is unreal.
Yeah. So highly likely that Saquon Barkley, well, at least has a clear path to 30 plus fantasy points here. And on a slate where those are going to be really, really hard to come by, let's just put him in and say, like, we're going to eat the salary. The ownership probably isn't going to be as high as it should be. And we just want those raw points.
Yeah, man. No, this build is off to a great start. Do you want to look at defense next to kind of see how much salary we'll have to play with, or do you want to go a different direction?
No, let's go a different direction. Let's stay in that game environment. And if we have Cooper Rush at quarterback for Dallas, and CeeDee Lamb is out, they just traded for Jonathan Mingo. Brandon Cooks may or may not. He's eligible to come back off an injured reserve this week. He may or may not come back. It just kind of sets up like we can't use Jake Ferguson because we've already have 2 tight ends on this roster. It's like, okay, Jalen Tolbert, if you're ever going to do it, this is it. You talked about the lack of upside from these wide receivers in the sub 6K tier. Tolbert probably brings the best kind of mix of floor and ceiling here of this group. So he's in the game environment we want. We're probably going to see Dallas chucking the football around the yard with Cooper Rush. And to me, like, Jalen Tolbert is the clearest bet for the volume to flow here. So we'll just throw in Jalen Tolbert here. Kind of a, if not now, win type bet.
Yeah.
And just just hope for the best kind of thing.
Oh yeah, man, I'm on board. Yeah, absolutely. I mean, they got to throw to someone, right?
Yeah. All right, where are we at? We got what? How much left?
5,100 per player. You got a running back, receiver, and defense. So yeah,
we're not dead. We're not dead.
definitely not. Got some space.
We'll fill in the other running back spot because there's a player that jumps off the page to me already, and I just think that he might not get the attention. I could be wrong. I could be wrong here, but that's Najee Harris. Najee playing the Commanders. I don't know if the Steelers are going to get much love from this game environment, but they still have a top defense. They have the tools to slow down Washington. And if we look at what Harris has done in the past, he's gone over 100 yards in each of the last 3 games. Yeah, and he's seeing the like snap to or touch to snap ratio that we kind of want. So like when he's on the field, he's seeing usage. So it matters less to me that like Warren is there. It matters less if like Cordell Patterson comes back or whatever the case may be, whoever else they want to throw back there, because when he's getting the snaps, he's seeing a high snap or a touch to snap ratio. So we'll throw him in here in a solid matchup. The Commanders are ranked. Let me get the number right. They're either second to last or dead last in yards allowed before contact. Oh, they're third to last. The Bears, we don't want to go to New England. The Bears and the Saints are 32nd and 31st in yards allowed before contact per attempt. And then we have the Washington Commanders. So the matchup is good. This is a spot where we've seen the usage recently. We've seen the kind of change since Russell Wilson has been quarterback. We're not seeing as many like designed carries for Justin Fields because he's not on the field. So Najee Harris has a good path to 101 and could see enough pass game involvement to like offset the need for multiple touchdowns here. So I would argue he does. Yeah.
I was just going to quickly ask you, not to nerd out too much, but is yards before contact the most important metric to you in terms of matchup for running back?
It is, and it's this extension. I used to use adjusted line yards, which is like a measure of how well an offensive line or a defensive line is like removing all other variables. And it's just saying like this offensive line is creating this many yards against a neutral opponent. Now there's a new metric, which is adjusted yards before contact. And that adjusts for things like down and distance and removes scrambles, removes trick plays, removes kneels and sacks and stuff like that. So I'm pulling this from Fantasy Points data on their offensive line, defensive line matchups tool. And we see that the Commanders are allowing 2.67 adjusted yards before contact, which effectively means a neutral offensive line against them is able to generate almost 3 yards of push before their running back is getting hit.
Oh, that's big.
Yeah. And then we look at what I like to like pair with that is then I look at running back yards after contact, and it gets you a good idea of like what to expect as like a median yards per carry coming into the week. So we pull up Najee, and he's averaging a solid 3.27 yards after contact per attempt. So his offensive line has a good matchup against a defensive line that is allowing 2.67 yards before contact. And now we add kind of his 3.27 yards after contact that he's adding. We have a rough expectation of like a yards per carry to expect. So he should be somewhere around the 5.4, 5.5 yards per carry mark. So what does that mean? He needs like 18 to 20 carries to pierce that 100 yards bonus for us. And that's what we really, really need. So all of that combines, like Najee Harris has a good shot at like going over 100 and popping one in here.
Love it, dude. Love it.
All right, now where? Let's fill in the defense and see what's left, shall we?
Have you already looked at defense? Yeah, what do you want here?
What we'll do is we'll actually pop in the most expensive defense and see what that gives us and then go from there.
Okay, so 50. Okay, so let's see here. 50.
Yeah, so we're at like Jordan Addison range.
Hopkins.
In a good matchup. DeAndre Hopkins is probably going to get a lot of attention because he is priced below the 6K range. it's a very, very different spot against the Broncos. Could see an outside island game. He's used in the slot, so he might not get pure shadow. But it's a very, very different matchup than last night against the Buccaneers here. All right, so let's remove the defense. It's either like, so we're gonna compare here. It's either Jordan Addison and the Chargers, or go to like a lower defense. Let's pop in like a Steelers, which gives us some correlation to Najee.
Yeah.
And then see what we have left for flex here.
So now
go to hit flex so we can see running backs as well.
Oh, right. Okay, yeah, Dowdle, Xavier Worthy. Let's see, William, Shakir, Pittman, Kelce. Can we play another tight end here? No,
yeah, give us another one. Yeah, dude. So there's not a ton to like here. We could throw in like Rashad White, but that's kind of like asking too much of Baker. So like going down in defense doesn't really give us anything extra here.
Yeah.
So we'll just take the higher defense, and we'll go to the Chargers against a Titans team that, is bottom of the league in turnovers per game. And then we'll throw in Jordan Addison.
All right, dude.
That's another team in the Vikings that they're on a lesser extent. Like this is to a lesser extent than the Eagles and the 49ers, but they have a high likelihood of scoring points against this opponent. The problem is like they're plenty fine in saying like some kind of similar to the 49ers in saying like we don't need to throw the ball around the football yard. So what we're looking for is like Jordan Addison to catch a long touchdown and then score another one, which I mean he can. He played the best game I've seen him play this season last week, which against a Colts defense is nothing special. But he's highly unlikely to see like a double-digit target game. We have TJ Hawkinson back in the fold. Justin Jefferson's just going to eat so much usage in this offense. Yeah. But we're really, really just saying like, hey, we expect Minnesota to score a bunch. Can Addison capture 2 of those touchdowns? Maybe. It's not like this is like a last man in type play on a roster. It's not like we're going to build around Addison this week.
Right, and hoping that he catches a long touchdown, and is able to put up, a solid score here. Because, like you said, Minnesota will score. Jacksonville is fairly tough against the run, so maybe, there will be a couple extra pass attempts. So, yeah, I like it, man. Cool, dude. So for the podcast, finished up here with Baker Mayfield, Saquon and Najee Harris, the 2 running back spots, Rakim, Jarrett, Jalen Tolbert, Jordan Addison, double tight end with Cade Otton and George Kittle, and then the Chargers D. Hilow, any final thoughts before we ship this one out?
Yeah, just be really, really cognizant of the fact of like where are the very few 25 plus fantasy points games going to come from, and attack those spots. So like it could be Deebo Samuel, it could be Christian McCaffrey, but we're fairly certain that the 49ers are going to return one. Same thing with the Eagles. Like it could be Jalen Hurts, it could be AJ Brown if his knee's okay. But that team is highly likely to return a solid fantasy score this week.
Awesome, dude. Hilow, great stuff as always. Guys, good luck this week as you prep for week 10, and we'll catch you on the next one. Hilow, thanks for your thoughts, dude.
Later, dudes.